New information about the oil tanker that was seized by the U.S. off the coast of Venezuela. Satellite imagery and shipping data obtained by CNN show it concealed its true location while docked at a Venezuelan oil terminal last month. Its transponder indicated it was hundreds of kilometers away in Guyana. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi released a video of U.S. military personnel seizing the ship in what marks a major escalation. President Donald Trump's move against Venezuela's president and its government. Bondi says the tanker has been under U.S. sanctions for years for involvement in an illicit oil shipping network. Venezuela's government calls the seizure an act of international piracy. Its president appeared unfazed.
Don't worry. Be happy.
Okay, I can hear myself, guys. All right, President Nicolas Maduro singing "Don't Worry, Be Happy" at a rally Wednesday, telling CNN his message to the U.S. is peace above all else. We've got Elena Treen collecting us from the White House, and Stefano Pozzebon is in Venezuela's capital of Caracas. Elena, I want to start off with you. President Trump was asked what they'll do with the oil, and here's what he had to say.
The oil on this ship.
Well, we keep it, I guess.
Where does it go? What port does it go to?
Well, you have to follow the tanker. You know, you're a good newsman. Just follow the tanker.
Do you know where it's going?
Follow it. Get a helicopter and follow the tanker.
Is it true it's going to
But we're gonna. I assume we're gonna keep the oil.
So, Elena, Venezuelan oil is sanctioned, but around 27 million barrels per month reach international markets, particularly China. So how does President Trump plan to crack down on oil exports and, I guess, importantly, because this is his effort, to try and squeeze Maduro and his earnings?
Yeah, I mean, this is a significant escalation, Eleni, of the United States pressure campaign on Maduro. But from talking to legal experts and people throughout the administration here, they argue that this is, of course, very different, a different mission from what we've seen. Some of the other strikes, particularly on, the 2 dozens, I should say, strikes that they've had on those boats traveling throughout the Caribbean and off the coast of Venezuela. Look, I think that video last night, Eleni, that the Attorney General Pam Bondi shared of these U.S. personnel rappelling down off of that helicopter, seizing that tanker with their guns drawn. I mean, those are remarkable images we're getting. We were told that this was namely a U.S. Coast Guard mission that was working in conjunction with the FBI, Homeland Security, and the Department of Defense. Now, what I found interesting was actually word of this surprise mission actually came from the president himself. Listen.
Our message to the people of the United States remains the same.
As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela. Large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening.
Now, look, the president said that he essentially had very good reason, the U.S. had very good reason for seizing this tanker, but he didn't really offer many details about why they did this and what to expect moving forward, as you played, Eleni, in that clip earlier of him saying, he doesn't really know what they're going to do with the oil that was in transport on that tanker. He said, I guess we'll keep it. Now, what's interesting is that the tanker named Skipper, it was sanctioned by the Biden administration back in 2022 for what they had said was Venezuela trying to transport this oil to Iran. And experts tell us from our conversations that this was a legally justified by the book mission. They note that the fact that the Coast Guard were the ones that were involved in this makes it very different from those strikes I was mentioning earlier that have killed 87 people or so on those boats that the Trump administration has alleged were carrying drugs. But I think big picture here, which is important to keep in mind, is this is a very different mission. It is definitely an escalation of the president trying to squeeze the Venezuelan dictator, but it's unclear really how this fits into that broader strategy of what the administration is saying, which is to try and really stop the flow of drugs into the United States. We also know, of course, that there is another goal in mind that they're not trying to publicly promote, but is to try and see Maduro be ousted from power. And my colleagues and I have reported on some of the plans that they've been working on behind the scenes should that happen, what leadership structure and those types of drafts that they've been working on to fill that leadership vacuum vacuum. All to say there are going to be a lot of questions about what this means moving forward. We're hoping to hear more from the president today on that, Eleni.
Yeah, Elena, thank you so very much for that update. Good to have you on. We've also got Stefano Postobon with us. And Maduro is calling this blatant theft. Venezuelan oil is predominantly sold to China at a huge discount. And even U.S. oil companies buy some of that oil, but it's basically in debt for oil deals, and that, of course, is allowed. I want you to tell me about how this new assault on oil tankers will hurt Maduro's earnings machine, because this is pretty significant. I mean, Venezuela earns around $4 billion in oil revenue every year.
I think if you, like just you pointed out, Eleni, if you come from an international perspective, it's hard to put into context how dependent the local economy, the country, but the government itself here is dependent on the business of oil, on the trade of oil. We're talking about more than 90% of foreign income that reaches Venezuela is because of these oil exports. And to be correct, the United States are still the largest purchaser of this oil through the oil major Chevron. But yes, you pointed out correctly that because of the sanctions that are in place on Venezuelan oil, a lot of this oil is funneled through black markets to the likes of China, Iran. Like Eleni was saying, it looks like this tanker was used in the past for bringing this oil, which is sanctioned, to Iranian companies, to Iranian buyers. I think it's important to point out that Maduro will be much more hurting from an action like the one we saw yesterday than from what we've seen for the last few weeks and months, which is attacks on alleged narco traffickers or he has been saying that some of them were simply fishermen in the southern Caribbean, and it's clearly something that rattled him much more than what we've seen in the past. I see this as a change of tactic. It's important to speak to Maduro. We were able to do it yesterday, and it was just a few minutes before actually the news break out of the seizure. But look at how he immediately pointed out that oil is crucial in his dealing with the United States. I was asking him what was his message for Trump, and this is what he told me.
Our message to the people of the United States remains the same. Peace. Peace above all else. No to crazy war. No to bloodshed for oil. No to war for oil, the recipe for eternal wars.
No bloodshed for oil, no war for oil, because the idea that the United States are here just to seize the Venezuelan oil, Venezuela sitting, of course, on top of the largest oil reserves in the world, is something that Maduro and his predecessor, the late President Hugo Chavez, have said time and again. It clearly looks that the United States are changing their tactic. Right? The strategy is still going after Maduro. It's still trying to provoke a regime change or perhaps a regime collapse here in Venezuela, which is clearly a very different thing. But the tactic has changed. Rather than going after the drug trafficking and going after regular Venezuelans who are employed by cartels to traffic drugs across the sea, now they're really going after Maduro's purse. And Maduro's first job as the leader of this country is, of course, to guarantee that every member of its government coalition, I'm talking about the army, I'm talking about illegal drug traffickers, of course, I'm talking about the judiciary system, every person in that government coalition wants a piece of the cake, and the piece of the cake comes from the oil. If the United States will go after the exports of oil from Venezuela, it's clearly something that will rattle Maduro much more than what we've seen in the past. Eleni?
Absolutely. All right, Stefano, great to have you with us. Thank you so much.